This is a podcast for the living.
And we're your hosts,
Graham
and Saul.
And we're here to share with you all kinds of creative,
educational,
inspirational,
straight from the heart
content that could change your life.
What?
Podcast.
Rickety podcast.
Brain juice.
You about to get
Braingasms.
educated.
Brain stuff.
Hey guys.
Hello.
Welcome to episode 6, I think this is.
Number 6.
We just had a really good live stream, pre-live stream to the podcast.
Yeah.
That's something.
I think we're going to try and start doing that a bit more now. It's a nice way to warm us up, and it's also a good way to kind of get our heads in the right space and to touch base with everybody as well.
Well, that's the thing, is like to do a podcast or to do even a YouTube channel, there's a level of lack of engagement. Like, we're just doing this and we have to wait to post the episode to get feedback. So doing the live beforehand kind of helps us to engage with people and make what we're doing a bit more relevant or whatever. Yeah, so it was really nice. I think it both relaxed us both a bit and helped us to get into the podcast zone.
We don't really necessarily have a topic this time, but we're going to delve into some of the stuff I think that we touched in the live a little bit. Introducing a few concepts. We're planning on having our dad featured on episode 10, and that is quite important
for us,
and I think for a lot of people as well. The only way to really explain this is he's a very well-renowned energy worker here in the city, and not just well-renowned in the city. He's very well-known in his circles all over the place. The only way to really explain it is he's booked many months in advance. It's hard to get your way into a treatment with him. Which we're not going to go into depths of what he does when he's on the podcast. We'll explore it a lot more. But I think going into the next few episodes, we're going to start to introduce some of the topics that we may talk about, because there's a lot there.
It's something that Graham and I are both sometimes scared to talk about, because in his lifetime, let's say in my mind, he's ahead of his time in a sense, and especially living in a place like Saskatchewan. So a lot of the stuff that he was talking about 20 years ago is stuff that is more widely accepted now, but 20 years ago it was really not so accepted.
And it's even, if you talk about it, let's say, this is a great thing to talk about too, but if you talk about some of these subjects in a public sphere, you'll be alienated for sure. There's, and not always, but a lot of places that you go to with these kind of ideas, these new age energetic concepts, they're not as accepted as you would want them to be.
I think I think they're more accepted now.
No doubt. It's 100% getting better, by all means. And it's not like it was 20 years ago, but there's still a level of, because there's so little understanding around the subjects, and it's only now that science is starting to even allow the exploration of it and people are delving into it. And now I would say with, YouTube and all these other platforms, we're starting to see it talked about more publicly. But it's still, at least in my world, I'm always kind of very delicate about who I talk to about these subjects, because I don't know, and I don't want to put my beliefs on you or force them on you if those aren't yours either.
Now, I will say in my world that I feel lucky to have, in my circles, to have really connected with people who have levels of this, of what we're talking, the spiritual stuff that we're talking about. They have aspects that they understand, and I feel like, in a weird way, the place we're living in, Saskatchewan, a lot of the younger people are more tuned into this stuff than not, and on some level they're tuned into it. And so I feel like I've had a lot of conversations with people around that, and I feel like I shouldn't have the fear that I have around it sometimes.
Yeah.
Where if I'm worried that if I go into the depth of what I understand about myself about it, that it is a bit woo-woo. That's the word I would use. Woo-woo.
Yeah.
Woo-woo-woo.
Which, you know, we in the live, we really delved into it, which I don't know that we'll get into it as much in this episode, but
we might.
We might, you never know. But man, it's a really strange and complicated thing, because it's stuff that's so...
I'm remembering to look more at you than
the camera.
Than the camera, and half. I mean, for you who are listening, that doesn't matter at all. But yeah, sometimes it's. I think Graham and I are both performers, so we tend to want to address the audience and talk to the audience. But I think that in this day and age, people enjoy more if we just engage in our conversation, and
feels more natural then.
They get to be fly on the wall.
Yeah, they get to observe.
So continue being a fly on the wall.
Yeah. But I was just saying that it's a strange thing. It's like you can talk about it from, let's say, the social acceptance lens, where you got the commonly accepted worldview or the belief right now that exists in the world that's all based off of a scientific system or a religious system on the other side, right? So you've got one system that is science, that says we need to measure absolutely everything. We need to be able to define it specifically. And then on the other side of the coin, you've got religion, which says you need to believe everything. You just have to believe it. So it's like right now it seems like what needs to happen is a marriage of the two, where we find the balance in the middle, where we blend what we know from science and we bring together what we know from religions and from spirituality and from all these different topics, and find a middle ground for them where we can both have belief and faith combined in one belief and faith, proof or whatever you want to call it, and faith, all blended together.
Which is actually a great way to describe our relationship. Because you tend to come more from the side of proof and having the science behind things.
Yeah.
And then I come more from the like intuitive and believe. I just believe it, and you know.
You believe it, but it's not like it's just a. It's a belief based on a feeling and a belief based on an intuition.
It's belief based on my own data collection, but I'm collecting it in my subconscious. I'm not collecting it into a booklet that I therefore can reference and cross-reference against other data points and stuff. Like I probably could, and I probably should. Going forward, every time I have one of these experiences, likely, hey, that might be just a great idea that I need to start doing from now on, is that when I have one of these experiences, just trying to like journal about it.
Write it down.
Yeah. Because there's a lot of the stuff that happens, but the reason why, like, my journey has more been, so from a young age, I was told that these things existed. But the world around me didn't reflect that these things existed, right? Mm-hmm. So then it was like this journey of finding that belief, not necessarily from the world. I can't find this world. I can't find the belief from the world around me, because the world around me is living in a different reality. Yeah,
the world wants to be rigid and mechanistic and follow certain rules and say, it's this way and science has proved it, and so therefore it is, instead of, anyway, sorry.
No, that's 100%. Yeah. Like our medical system, right? Mm-hmm. Like I know a lot of nurses, mm-hmm. and I know a lot of people who are in nursing. And so they're part of this system. And the hard part about that, for me, is that I believe that there's a different way that we can heal and work through things. Mm. But those people have trained under this science their whole life. And this science is fact to them, right? Yeah. And I still love and respect these people. I just believe that there's another way about things. And like a prime example that a lot of people know nowadays is Wim Hof.
Yeah.
Someone who through science has proved these things. So it's just like, it's almost like it's this slow process and this matter of time where there's more people like this Wim Hof.
Well, let's talk about what Wim Hof has proven, because not everybody's going to know.
Yeah.
So, for example, Wim Hof is the Iceman, for anybody who doesn't know, and basically the journey, or what I understand of what Wim Hof's background is he was very depressed and sad. I don't know. His wife
took her life.
Okay,
Yeah.
so, and then he was in this really dark place, and he realized that sometimes he could find his happiness in the moment. And I don't know exactly what the process was to get him to this place. Maybe you know a bit more about the background?
I just know that when this happened, his reaction was to go to the cold.
Yeah.
He was intuitively drawn to the cold.
Yeah.
And so he didn't go to the cold based on science.
No.
He went to the cold based on intuition and a feeling and a draw that pulled him there.
Yeah.
And he just stuck to this to help him cure his depression and be there for his kids.
And so what it was he would submerge himself into incredible cold, like ice cold water. And he found that in those moments, he would end up in this thing where he would just be so happy. He would find happiness in that moment. And so that was the beginning of the process. But, how many years later in his journey, as he realized how important that was, and then he delved into it more and more and more, brought people along the path, then because he had done so many things that people were already not really believing, then he brought some scientists into the picture and started studying him and his process, whether that be his breathing techniques or his submersion techniques as well.
So the one study that they did is they did submerge him into a tank of ice, and they took his body temperature, and he managed to keep his body temperature at I can't remember what it was, but he managed to keep his body temperature above the freezing, and he was actually melting the ice. So this is a real human doing this.
Yeah.
And so then when you go back to, we can continue on his story really quick, where it's a real human, they have to keep adding this ice. So then another test that he did going forward is he had them actually inject him with, some sort of virus or something. And he did his breath work and he removed it. Now they thought maybe he's a special case.
Yeah.
So then he took a group of people and trained these people. They had never done his shit before. And he trained them to do it. And they injected this whole team of these brand new people. Guess what? Everybody did it. So then you look at a case like that. And then you also look at our current medical system. And
who would not even go near that.
No. And you just think that our current medical system is about slapping a Band-Aid on things, right?
Okay, let's talk about something crazy. We can come back to Wim Hof, but the placebo effect on its own. We just ignore the fact that 30% of people who believe that they will overcome something, like if you give someone a sugar pill and tell them it's going to cure their cancer or whatever, 30% of people who get the placebo are miraculously healed from it. They can heal tumors. They've seen unbelievable things happen. And the whole medical system ignores the fact that 30% of cases just disappear. So what is that?
There's another stat I heard, which is that the doctor is responsible for a high percentage of whether or not somebody will cure based on their attitude that they're giving them.
Yeah, so Sweden or Switzerland has implemented a program where, I can't remember exactly how it goes, but people who have cancer, instead of telling them that they have cancer right away, they have the physicians literally come in and lie to the patient. The physician then contacts their next of kin or the person closest to them and says, okay, this person has this, we're not going to let them know. What you need to do is get them to stick to a rigid diet and follow these specific things. And so they get them to follow the healthy protocol, but they don't actually tell the person that they're ill. And so they're just taking advantage of the placebo effect. And yes, the statistic was something like the physician is the number one reason why a person will recover or not.
Yeah.
I remember, I think that was Greg Braden or something that was talking about that. But
Something like that,
Yeah.
where, basically if the doctor says, well, you will never walk again, most people are going to believe that. Now,
Yeah.
there are some obscure cases where the type of person gets told that and they're like, excuse me? Who are you to tell me that? And then they use that as motivation to then make them, I'm walking again.
Yeah.
But not everybody's like that. A lot of people just take the face value of our medical system and the science in the world that we're in.
Yeah.
And so, so living in this world, to go back to what I was saying in the beginning, is like living in this world where I 100% believe that there's this other reality and this other way to do things. So then, but then only reflecting and seeing this other world that is based in whatever the hell it's based in. And so it was really tough when I was young. It was really confusing. But then you find
there's little pockets of the believers or those who have proven an alternative way of thinking to themselves. And I think I would say that our generation kind of, like the law of attraction came out, was really popular, and then there was all this spiritual stuff that came to the surface, and
Jay Shetty's really popular.
Exactly. There's all these spiritual people that are
more in the mainstream.
And that certainly wasn't the way 20 years ago or however long ago. So it definitely is more. There's more information available. There's an awakening definitely happening.
So then back to the fear thing, which is like, for me, it's the fear of what has happened to our dad, which is like growing up and seeing people kind of scoff at him and all his information, right?
Yeah.
Seeing him laughed at. And so then it maybe built up this fear of like, ooh, I'm kind of nervous to talk about these things because I don't want to be laughed at.
Yeah. You don't want to be alienated.
No.
And as a whole, unless you're with people who are on this side of the coin, there is going to be a tendency to, like you said, think it's wooey. And, give it 100 years and it will be in a different place.
Totally.
I love the example of when you think about 100 years ago and you say, okay, well, even if I went and told the most advanced scientist at the time, maybe not the most because they would probably believe it, but let's say you told say you went to a school and you started telling people 100 years ago that everyone's going to have cell phones in 100 years, these fucking devices that can communicate with anywhere in the world.
Example.
And they'd be like, no, you're psycho, dude. There's no way. That's impossible. Oh, how about, oh yeah, here's another thing that's going to happen. 200 years ago, you're saying, yeah, we're going to go jump on a fucking metal plane or a metal thing and it's going to fly me around the world, Like, no, you're not going to believe these things because they're so beyond what you know.
Yeah.
I'll mention the name right now. I'm not going to get into it much, but Nassim Haramein is on the edge right now of, like, literally on the edge of the most incredible science that is available that I've been studying. I mean, he's doing things that are absolutely phenomenal, and he's talking about things that prior to listening to him speak, I knew were possible, but I didn't realize how close we were to those things. The ideas from Star Trek and the Jetsons and these things that are like, whoa, this is beyond, man. This is.
I will say though, Graham, that you are an engineer. Like you might not have gone and done the schooling, you might not have the certificates or whatever, but the way that your brain actually works is you can understand very high level concepts. And I started watching him on Gaia.
Yeah.
I started watching his series. I mean, granted, I watched it when I was sleepy.
Yeah.
But like, I was in bed. I was going to sleep. I wanted to inundate myself with some of his brilliance before I slept. Yeah. And so I need to watch it during the day, and I need to watch a ton of the stuff. But yes, he is the concepts. They're not easy to grasp.
Yeah. Which is why, like, he has an academy, the Resonance Foundation, which is great, but I haven't recommended anyone to it because when I'm studying it, I'm having to like reread things a bunch of times and like go back in the video to even process what was just said.
Yes.
Because of engineer's bias, which is
Yes.
if you guys don't know what engineer's bias is, it's basically when you've got an engineer or a person who's very advanced in a subject they've studied for 20, 30 years, which is part of the challenge we're going to have with our dad when he comes on, is they get so advanced and so far away from what their initial phase of learning was that it's very difficult to communicate to the person who has not studied the subject matter at all. And so engineer's bias, actually, it happens in engineering all the time, where the engineer knows all this stuff and they're trying to communicate to the people who go and manufacture it, and they can't. So in diagrams and stuff, they give such detailed instructions for the people who are manufacturing to try and bypass the bias. So anyway, I can't remember why I started telling that.
Okay, I have an interesting thought. I have an interesting thought, and you can correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah.
But from that live, I had sort of an intuition, and the live we just did, it kind of recorrected something in my brain, because I was getting all messed up in my head and thinking that I was not relatable to people. I was thinking that because I couldn't properly explain these things. But then in that live, I came to realize that most of the world right now is relying on intuition, because we've been forced into not researching things. And so we've been forced into this kind of like just believing stuff. So I've realized that like my intuitive way of doing the spirituality is actually really useful to the average person, because it allows them, without having to do this massive amount of studying, to access the beginner levels of it or whatever.
Well, I think that I would argue like that, just like the science and religion thing, there's kind of two groups of people. You'll have the people who need to deeply research and understand, and then those who can go into it more just from a heart perspective and believe based on their experiences and their feelings, and they don't need as much proof.
I mean, I'm even saying that like there's less people who read books now. There's less people who are like technically intellectuals and who spend more time taking in stuff like Netflix and stuff. Like I'm saying, like you and Dad are kind of a rare case where you guys will study and study and study, and there's other intellectuals, 100%.
Oh, yeah.
Right. So it's as if like the person would have to come. Not, they don't have to, but this is a scenario where they could come to me and learn the basics of the intuition and like just inundate with the stuff that they could learn without having to have this immense understanding of it. And then they build up a level of understanding to then talk to like you, where you're coming from this like more complex.
Yeah, I know exactly what you mean.
Yeah.
I think it's gonna. It depends always on where the person is at in their journey, right?
Yeah.
Somebody could be so advanced intellectually in their understanding of what the spiritual math is, let's say, but then have never seen it applied or never seen proof in this world. They don't know
the inner standing.
Yeah, they don't have the inner standing, exactly. Where I love using the example of Alex Gray, because clearly that's a person who can see. If you look at his books and his paintings, he can see all of the energy. You can't paint like that. And whether he can see it on his eyes or not, I don't know.
Yeah.
But this is a fascinating topic, and I'm going to introduce it. I hope that Dad won't be offended by me introducing it ahead of time, but because there's a big difference between being able to see in your mind's eye. A person like Nassim Haramein, when he's visualizing something, you can tell that he is so deep in his imagery that you could ask him a question, let's say about, oh, can you build this thing about these materials? And in his brain, he could calculate the qualities of the materials and do all the math in his brain, in his visuals, and just... And that's something that Nikola Tesla and Einstein and all these amazing physicians...
Da Vinci.
Yeah, exactly. They would do this work internally. You would have these specialists who could build an entire machine in their mind, create it, make it work, do the math entirely, and then go create it once they knew it worked. They did everything inside their mind. So that's what all the great scientists are doing. They're using the visual aspect of their mind to do this incredible stuff. Well, Dad has trained himself to take the imagery that I'm not sure if Alex Gray sees visually in his eyes or if he just sees it in his mind. Dad is trained to bring that into his eyes and talked about it as if he sees the energy through his skin. So it's still a feeling nature, but there's an overlaying nature where he can almost see the toroidal energy or see the different spiraling energy of the clients he's working on.
Yeah.
And so I don't want to go too deep into that because once he's...
We'll just put it at a basic level is like, I feel like where I'm at is like quite a few steps before him. Like, I feel like I have a blocker in my visual aspect, but in terms of feeling, I can feel... I'm very aware of the feeling nature in my own body, and that's what guides me in this universe is basically every single day I'm not paying attention to the world around me. I'm only paying attention to how the stuff inside of me is reacting to the world outside of me. So it's a constant observation of my inner thing. And so if we're having this podcast conversation and I'm throughout the conversation I'm checking inside of me, and it's like, yeah, this is feeling, there's no like tension or no weirdness inside of me, so I'm able to just like, there's flow here, and that's, I feel like what I'm doing with my conversation is that most of the times I'm just kind of listening to you and I'm seeing where the feeling nature guides inside of me, and then I respond from that spot. Whereas for him, it's past, like when I sit in meditation, I'll feel tension in my heart, right? And so that's the first thing I do. Close my eyes, and then I'll just put my consciousness on that spot. And I don't actually know what's happening necessarily, but all of a sudden when I look at it, the tension starts to move, it starts to morph. I look long enough, and it clears out. And I'm like, that feels good.
So it's an introductory level of the same thing.
100%.
We're all, and exactly, to bring it back down, it's not like Dad wasn't born with these abilities. He trained it in himself. So it's something that we are all capable of doing, which is the really, really cool part about that. Very exciting. And so with enough energy and enough time, a person can train themselves to do this work or do whatever spiritual work they want to do. It's a really nice, validating story to hear. So I know you are too. I'm very much looking forward to having him on the podcast.
For sure.
We are totally at the end of our time though. Which, I don't even know what just happened in this podcast. I don't know what we talked about. I'm pretty sure we covered some cool stuff.
It was definitely flow state.
Super flow state.
We had the conversation before with them, so we in the live we did on Instagram, so it allowed us to really be more in our flow state energy. And we also welcomed some concepts that
we've been kind of on the edge of not wanting to delve into, but it felt right tonight.
What you resist persists. We both know this. These are the topics that we actually need to talk about.
It's true. It's true. So on that note, thank you very much for watching, and please subscribe and like and comment. Oh wait, we have to answer.
Do we have an actual comment?
We do. We have one.
No way.
We do. We have one.
I was gonna ask. So I just wanted to say that
Okay, never mind. Sorry. Go ahead.
I just wanted to say that first of all, I don't know. The subscribing thing is great because it helps us understand that we're doing a good thing. The liking thing helps the algorithm on YouTube, so it pushes our podcast forward. But the commenting is the utmost importance because, the only reason we have these conversations on our own anyway, and so the part that is dope for us is to be able to bring these conversations externally and then be able to interact with others. So it helps us a lot when you interact. We get a lot of joy when you interact
Yeah.
and comment. And
Definitely.
like we said on the last podcast, at the end of each podcast, we're going to read the comments and respond to them on our YouTube. So if you watch this one, please go to our YouTube, subscribe, like, and drop a comment, because we'll read it at the end of our next podcast.
Yeah. Okay, so quickly, the question is from Ryzen.
Nice.
Thanks, Ryzen. Okay, so what excites you about the podcast, and do we see the format changing as we go?
Okay. I guess what really excites me about the podcast is that it's a challenge. Like I just said, Graham and I have these conversations all the time. And so we kind of get in our comfort zone with them maybe. And when you all of a sudden are broadcasting them, you put yourself in front of people, it challenges our conversation. It makes us go to the next level of our conversation. It's like, if you're going to talk about this, then someone might call you out on that. So it starts to deepen your understanding of the things that you're saying. So it's very exciting in that sense for me to go deeper into everything that I'm studying and trying to understand. That's number one. Number two is just the chance to offer people who might not have an opportunity to be in a spiritual growth community, or a growth, whatever, it doesn't have to be spiritual, but a growth community, and just to offer them a chance to be a part of a weekly thing. Like, my hope is that there's people who don't have this chance, so they're tuning in, and every week they get inspired to just go continue their own journey and grow on their own.
Yeah.
Because I know things are so much harder without a community. So it's just about building a community with access. And so that's what I'm excited about.
Yeah, I totally agree. I might not even add anything to that. It's just the thing that really excites me is just the potential for growth and to affect change in the world. That's all I've ever wanted to do. That's all you've ever wanted to do. It's just an opportunity to make a difference on whatever level it is, and to share our own growth and our own process with whoever wants to listen, and hopefully not only have that affect them, but have that in turn, it's a feedback loop, right? We're gonna support each other, and that part's beautiful. I love that so much. I love that idea.
Even the fact that we can connect with Jesse.
Yeah, who had disappeared from our lives for so long, and now it's like, oh fuck, this like genuine connection with Jesse again, which is unreal.
Yeah.
Okay, and then quickly, do you see the format changing? Yeah, absolutely, 100%. From my perspective, I 10,000% see it changing, because we're so growth oriented that, I mean, already since podcast number 1, we've made 10 changes. I mean, how many more changes? We can't help ourselves. Every time an episode ends, we're like, well, how could we improve it? Somebody makes a comment, try this. We want to try it. We want to be constantly adapting and growing, and so absolutely the format's going to change.
You've said it once, which is like we're creating a gravitational pull or something around this. We're
creating mass, building mass. Gravity is created by mass, right? If you pack something really densely, that's what a sun is. It's the most dense object in the universe. Pack it really, really dense. The more dense it is, the more gravity surrounds that object. And so the more we pack, the more we put together, the more weight and mass we give it.
Which is why it's not just up to us, because yes, we are responding and then acting, but actually it's everybody who's observing outside of us, because we can make changes from an internal stance, but every time someone from an external stance offers a suggestion or has an idea and we invite that in, then that's that's growing the internal mass, and it creates the change. So it is, like he was saying, like this feedback loop of, and that's how these things turn into what they're gonna be.
Yeah.
It's very possible it could be something really cool, and we're both.
It's already something really cool, but
True.
it could be something it could get very big.
True.
It always has that potential. But one way or another, either way, like to sit here and have this conversation with you is incredibly rewarding on its own. So
That's
it doesn't
enough.
ever need to be anything more than that.
No, yeah, like this may be, we've both started enough things and ended enough things that
it's
if this ends and we both move on to our next journeys, but this enhances those next journeys, that's awesome. Or if this goes, that's awesome. Doesn't matter.
Yeah.
It's just the conversation and the interaction with people who we aren't getting to interact, especially COVID times.
Yeah.
New energies in our world, growth oriented, blah blah blah.
Yeah. Okay, thanks so much, you guys. Thanks for the comment, Jesse Risen. Much appreciated. And yeah, we'll see you guys